This is the Equally Yoked Show. I'm your host, Charles. Welcome back. We are talking about a lot of stuff today, and some stuff is unfortunately tragic, and it is the way life is. A lot of tragedy, a lot of nonsense, and ultimately we're going to be looking at all of these things with a very critical lens on. And I say critical in the sense that we need to really analyze this stuff and see exactly how crazy it is that people are when they look at the Jewish people. I don't know what it is. I honestly don't know. I mean, the only thing that I know is that this is a spiritual battle. This is an intensely spiritual battle with the Jewish people. That I know that, for a matter of fact, Satan hates the Jewish people. And so we find ourselves looking at an age-old battle, really. From the very beginning, we see so much happening. So we're just going to wait for a few folks to get in here, and we'll start the show in just a moment. So as we just kind of let people join in, I hope you guys are finding everything great so far. You guys are having a good night so far, right? We're got a lot to talk about. We have so much to recover. Okay, we're going to be going over the attack on this young Jewish couple. We're going to get some comments from Ilhan Omar, or lack thereof. We're going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill, the passing in the House. Gas. We're going to be talking about gas. The Golden Dome. We're going to address a comment that I got in my email. We'll talk about a few things. And so that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. So as we let a couple of folks join in here, we're going to be going through some topics today that I think are very important to what is happening in this world stage. And so thanks for joining me, guys. We're going to be talking about a lot of things here. We're going to be talking about some stuff with regards to this Jewish couple that had recently been murdered in DC during a museum event. Quite unfortunate to have to go through this stuff. Sarai, say hi, hello. Thanks for joining the podcast. Thanks for the support. Wifey. Everybody else, thanks so much for joining me. Look, guys, this is going to be quite an interesting show as we get into it. Feel free to let your comments, put your comments down below. We'll talk about all the stuff. We're going to be looking at your comments, reading them as we go. But otherwise, let's take a look at this clip here. We're just going to get an idea of what exactly happened with this Jewish couple. These Israeli embassy staffers, they were killed in DC, and this is just absolutely tragic. So let's take a look. Let me switch you guys on over here, and we're just going to get right into the news cycle.
News: a couple shot and killed outside the Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. You are watching the National News Desk. I'm Jan Jeffcoat. It's Thursday, May 22nd. Authorities say both victims worked at the Israeli embassy. We want to get right to Mark Boyle at the live desk for the latest information. And Mark, police describe this as a targeted anti-Semitic attack. And as we know, it happened right near the FBI's field office in D.C. as well.
Just a few blocks away. I also just heard from the D.C. police. They're not going to be releasing any more information this morning. No planned news conferences. I do expect that we should hear something, though, later this morning, perhaps this afternoon, from federal officials. Police described this as an anti-Semitic attack, and it was, as you mentioned, close to those offices, Jan. A tragic scene unfolding around 9 o'clock outside the event there at the Capitol Jewish Museum in the nation's capital here in D.C. Investigators now identifying the suspect, 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago. They say he opened fire on a couple of people, killing 2 young Israeli embassy aides. He then entered the museum. He was detained by event security. When he was handcuffed, witnesses grabbed their phones, and they could hear this guy screaming, I did it for Gaza. And you can hear it in this video as he says, "Free Palestine." Take a listen.
This is just wild. How can anybody stand for this nonsense? We have a guy yelling "Free Palestine." He just murdered some people, and this is for Gaza. I mean, you say Chicago, Illinois, my hometown. Gosh, I mean, come on. This is apparently so far a lone suspect in this Israeli shooting. And he is pro-Hamas. His name is Elias Rodriguez. And he was being detained there, as you saw in this clip.
And responding officers arrived just a few minutes later to this close-range shooting, and they found one man, one woman unconscious, not breathing. They tried to save the victims, but they couldn't. Now, Israel's foreign minister identified the victims as Yoram Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram. We have a photo of this young couple. They were going to be engaged in just a few days. Israel's ambassador to the U.S. revealed this tragic news.
Young couple, just about to be engaged. And this is a young Christian couple, mind you. So they're not only Jews, they're Christians. So this is just a heinous act by somebody who is pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, and is shouting all this nonsense. Yet, does he even know what he's even referring to? You say you're not trying to defend a murderer, are you? I'm not defending any murderers here. This guy named Elias Rodriguez. No, absolutely not. What I am going to advocate for is the fact that Jewish people are constantly persecuted, and they've always been persecuted since the beginning of time. And since they became a sort of, really the start of humanity. Yet these human beings that were created, not necessarily Jews, up until the tribe of Judah came in. The name Jew comes from the name of Judah. But otherwise, the Jews have been persecuted since the beginning of time, essentially. And there's always been a hatred towards Jews. And one might wonder, well, why is that? Well, I know why. I know that this is essentially this is all spiritual. This is all involved in not only the natural, but this is what happens in the spiritual is manifested in the natural. And this is the manifestation. This is Jewish people getting killed. This is essentially no different than what happened on October the 7th. Say this is not even about Jews or Christians. You say this man is crazy. This is a crazy man looking for fame? Possibly. But he went and murdered this couple. Rosie Ocean, I will not tolerate that nonsense. You'll be removed. Same thing with you, Philip. Remove. Anybody shouting "Free Palestine" and that nonsense, you'll be removed. I won't be able to catch all of you, but it's garbage. Absolutely garbage. This is quite terrible.
That he had purchased a ring this week, and the intention was to propose to his girlfriend next week in Jerusalem.
How is that even okay? This no heart. Let's check out some of this other information. So this is Ilhan Omar she's asked to comment on this scenario, and this is wild. Just check this out.
Progressive Democrat Ilhan Omar, well, she was asked about the attack early this morning. This was her response. Roll it.
Congresswoman Omar, can I get your reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night?
I'm going to go for now.
I'm going to go for now. Ilhan Omar is how in the world does she even get into the power that she's in? Being somebody who, the things that she says, if she'd done this in her own country, she'd be beheaded, most certainly. So the things that she advocates for, the things that she says, are just completely garbage. completely garbage. And I absolutely find it terrible that she has nothing to say upon this matter because she herself is a hater of Jews. Let's play that back.
Reaction to the shooting that happened in D.C. last night.
I'm gonna go for now.
I'm going to go for now. That is wild. Does no one see how insane this is? Now, me personally, I think this is demonically possessed woman. She's constantly advocated for this. I mean, without even saying it, maybe she's not even said it directly, but the death of the Jews. I mean, completely disrespectful for the fact that this young Israeli couple, that she has nothing to say, not even one single word to say, well, we're praying for the families, nothing. I think we actually definitely need to pray for the families of these young couples. It's absolutely erroneous, the types of things that this woman does. I mean, come on. How is that even okay? But we know throughout history, the Jews have always been persecuted, as I mentioned, from the beginning, essentially the beginning of the world. They've been time and time again attacked, especially during the time of Hitler, October the 7th, the war in 70s, the war in the 90s. As soon as Israel became a nation in 1948, what happened? They went to war. They became a nation again, then they went to war the very next day. Egypt declared war on them. I think it was Egypt. If not, correct me in the comments. I mean, that is absolutely insane. The Israelites, Israel is really a true testament to the fact that although they've been persecuted time and time again, we don't find them being this sort of marginalized or group of people where they claim that they need reparations for the past, that the past things that have happened to them. Like in some cases with some certain ethnic groups that they feel that they deserve reparations. This is spoken amongst the left, more specifically the radical left. And so I think we should really pray for this couple's families. This couple has moved on as from a Christian standpoint, they've met their right in the presence of the Lord. As soon as they died, they're right in the presence of the Lord. So they have no worries at this moment. The two of them, they died together tragically, about to get married, about to do things the right way. And look what happens. Destroyed. It's hard to get onto the next topic when we got such crazy stuff. So we're actually going to take a look at something that Attorney General Pam Bondi, some comments that she says with regards to this. I think absolutely necessary to play some of this stuff. You might have already seen some of this stuff, but I like covering it over because it's absolutely important. Let's take a look.
You have to feel safe in this country, and this hate speech has got to stop. We have to come together as not only a community here, but as a nation and as the world. And you being from Germany, you see that. We have to keep everyone safe, and that is the job right now of the Metropolitan Police, Mayor Bowser, Janine Pirro. We were all out here all night long. Everyone is working together as a team. FBI, ATF, our U.S. Marshals are out here trying to protect everyone. But our Jewish community must feel safe. What we saw last night was disgusting. I saw a young man's body being taken away who was about to get engaged. He had an entire life in front of him, and that was taken away. The hate has got to stop, and it has to stop now. And this person will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You all have to understand, I can't talk about the facts. I can't talk about anything else now. They are working tirelessly to make sure this investigation goes proper. Everyone is working together, and that's what's going to happen now.
Not going to tolerate the nonsense. I really am not, because as soon as you start talking about anything with regards to Jews and Israelis, you start to see so much nonsense. Like this, it's like everybody becomes possessed and they start talking about this. They start talking in just like demonic language. Wow. And most certainly will Pam Bondi prosecute these people, especially those that are in colleges that are advocating for the fact that they're pro-Hamas, they're claiming and shouting free Palestine, they're causing sort of all this damage with all these demonstrations. There's no peaceful demonstrations with any of this stuff, and yet they're getting their visas revoked. Thank God for that. Thank God for that.
He was devastated. He was devastated, and it broke my heart to talk to Bibi last night. He was devastated, and I assured him we were looking into this. Of course, all of our investigators were working together, and I also spoke to President Trump multiple times, who was just heartbroken and devastated by this. And, you know, his first directive to us was make America safe again, and that's what we are going to do. There is no place for this hate in our country and in our world.
Yeah, I mean, spot on. I wanted to take a look at some of this stuff, so because it talks about some pro-Hamas groups celebrate horrific murder of Israeli diplomats outside Jewish museum as heroic attack. I mean, can you believe it? Yeah, I can. I absolutely can. It says pro-Hamas groups and other Iran-backed trolls hailed the barbaric murder of 2 Israeli embassy staffers at a Washington, D.C. Jewish museum as a heroic attack, claiming it was a justified response to the war in Gaza. Now, if you don't know what's happening in Gaza, of course, Trump and Bibi Netanyahu, they've been talking about this plan to bring Gaza back to the paradise that it used to be. And as Trump gave Benjamin Netanyahu the green light, Benjamin has gone in and has decided to completely try to take over Gaza 100%. And so so many people are calling for the stoppage of this, because they don't want to see Gaza handed back to the ones who actually own the land. When the Jews themselves during 2005, they actually removed their own people so that the Palestinians can live there, because no other nation around this area, around this region, wanted them. They were in Lebanon. They were in Jordan. Egypt doesn't want them. So many issues surrounding the Palestinians. And some of them are wonderful people. I know of a wonderful Palestinian man, wonderful Christian. It's not like the radical Palestinians that you would see. Nonsense. Complete nonsense. And we have these people that are praising pro-Hamas Gaza Now Media Group celebrated suspect Elias Rodriguez, 31, as an ally against Zionism and welcomed the violent attack that killed soon-to-be engaged couple Yaron Lashinsky, 28, and Sarah Milgram, 26, the Middle East Media Research Institute reported. So sad. And from Memory TV talks about the fact that their Palestinian factions, Iran-backed Iraqi militias, jihad clerics celebrate deadly shooting at Jewish event in Washington, D.C. by pro-Palestinian activists who yelled Free Palestine. Now, there's a video circulating that is online that you can find through Memory TV that talks about the fact that there's this man, part of the, has a high position in the Hamas group, militia. And he's talking about the fact that Free Palestine and all this has been infiltrated into the universities. And this is something that they could have never hoped for, in the sense that, or rather, this is something that they hoped for, but they didn't think it would get to this point. And yet it's the biggest thing ever. The most wildest thing ever. And so, such tragedy that has happened over this past couple of days with regards to this. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at this. We're going to move on from the tragedy of the story to try to bring some good news into what's happening on the front of America, even though the sad news has happened with this young couple. May God bless their families. May God lead their families into peace. And just bring joy to them, because this young couple is now in the presence of the Lord. They have no more need to worry, because our bodies are just a shell. They're just a shell. As tragic as it is, they are probably having the time of their eternity, not lives, eternity, because they are in heaven as of right now, as we speak. Now, of course, always winning, Trump's big, beautiful bill gets House approval. Let's take a look at what's happening here on this front. Wild. It finally, last podcast, we talked about the fact that the big, beautiful bill was headed to the House, and they had no idea if it was going to pass the House at all. And yet, look what happened. Lo and behold, we have a wonderful thing that is passed. And that is the big, beautiful bill gets approval in the House. So let's read some of this information here. It says, breaking. Now, this is some of the description here from Breitbart. They share this image here. The U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tax and spending bill cleared another hurdle early Thursday morning as the House of Representatives delivered its assent. The vote was 215 to 214 to 1. The multi-trillion-dollar tax break package contains numerous elements of Trump's far-reaching agenda and has been delivered via an all-night session. Now, with all of this stuff, when we're going to start seeing the tax cuts, when we're going to start seeing the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, all this stuff, some of the things that we wanted in here are not entirely included, such as no tax on Social Security. But what they're doing is they're actually doing a Social Security tax credit. So they're giving each individual $4,000 in the sense that it's basically offsetting the taxes that get removed from Social Security. And so this big, beautiful bill, the measure is now officially known as One Big, Beautiful Bill Act. Failure is not an option. Failure means a $4 trillion tax increase, the largest in American history at a time when the voters are already paying too much for everything else. This is from Senator Bernie Moreno, who told Breitbart News last week about passing the bill. So we have to make this tax reform permanent. So they're trying to make this permanent. As of right now, this is something that is only implemented for 10 years, just about. And at some point, this will break. They're going to try to break to get this permanent, a permanent passing into the law, so that this can be something that us Americans will continue to benefit on for the rest of our life, as opposed to something just being passed over by executive order by the next president, whoever it is. If it's somebody that's against this, hopefully we're looking for somebody like J.D. Vance to step in after Donald Trump. It'd be a huge surprise if Donald Trump wanted to rerun again, but I don't see that happening. He has said himself that he doesn't want to run again, but otherwise, that's some great news on that front. We're also looking into heading into Memorial Weekend. And for the Memorial Weekend, we have a nice, wonderful surprise with the fact that, check this out. Promises made, promises kept. Memorial Day set for the lowest gas prices in over 20 years. For those who pay for gas, guess what? You're going to have some low gas prices shortly. It says Americans celebrating Memorial Day by hitting the road will likely be paying the cheapest gas prices since 2003. GasBuddy, a fuel-saving platform, said Tuesday that it forecasts the national average price of gasoline to be $3.08 per gallon on Memorial Day. That would make it the cheapest since 2001 in normal terms. After adjusting for inflation, it would be the lowest since 2003. That is awesome. American road trip culture remains resilient, Gas Buddy said in news released announcing their 2025 summer travel survey. I've never used Gas Buddy, but hey, seems like this is pretty creditable because last summer, the national average price of gasoline was $3.58 per gallon on Memorial Day. This year's lower price reflects increased oil production that has lowered crude oil prices, which, of course, Biden removed the fact that we were going to be energy independent and it started to take from our oil reserves. And so the fact that we're now producing oil, increased oil production, this has lowered the crude oil prices. A barrel of Brent crude, the global standard for oil prices, is currently priced at $65.07, down significantly from the $83.71 a year ago, which was during President Joe Biden, Sleepy Biden, during his term. You say, bro, it's 1:39 a.m. at where I'm at. It's 12:02 a.m. Where are you at? Where are you at? Let's see. Let me see if I need to address any of the comments here. I see so many coming through. Let's see. We broke God's laws, but Jesus paid our fine. Absolutely. He has the receipts. Jesus has the receipts, and at some point, Jesus will indeed show us the receipts. And I understand that my screen is flickering black. Sometimes this happens. I really don't understand why it does that, and it is quite annoying. I am connected via wirelessly to my camera, so in many cases, this is what happens. And yeah. So let's continue on here with the news cycle. We're going to be looking at something that, let's make sure we're not forgetting anything here, because the next item here is the Golden Dome. The fact that Trump made an announcement. There's some investments that have already started, or rather, I think it's with the passing of the big beautiful bill or something. Maybe it's the executive. We'll take a look at this. We need to just dive deep into this. But this is an announcement with the Secretary of Defense, and this is regarding the Golden Dome. Now, if you don't know, the sort of name sort of comes from the Israeli Iron Dome. And the Iron Dome, of course, they want to implement the Golden Dome within I think they want to implement it within Israel. But the idea stemmed from Ronald Reagan, where he wanted to create this sort of Golden Dome around America to protect America from nuclear warfare. And other missile projections that would be shot from other nations. But the fact is, this has been something that has been wanting to be put into place by Joe Rogan, by Ronald Reagan. That is far different from Joe Rogan. And, of course, Donald Trump. And so we're looking at this information here. We're going to go and take a look at, I'll bring you guys over to what exactly I'm looking at here.
As we make a historic announcement about the Golden Dome missile defense shield. That's something we want. And Ronald Reagan wanted it many years ago, but they didn't have the technology. But it's something we're going to have. We're going to have it at the highest level. I want to thank Secretary Hegseth, who's been fantastic, and Secretary Rubio, and Space Force Vice Chief of Space Operations, General Mike Gutlein. I also want to recognize Senators Dan Sullivan, Kevin Cramer, and Jim Banks, fantastic senators, great talents, great political talents, and people that love our country. In the campaign, I promised the American people that I would build a cutting-edge missile defense shield to protect our homeland from the threat of foreign missile attack. And that's what we're doing. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have officially selected an architecture for this state-of-the-art system that will deploy next-generation technologies across the land, sea, and space, including space-based sensors and interceptors.
This stuff sounds like some futuristic, insane technology. It almost sounds, if you ever watch some of the Avengers movies, it sounds like this sort of satellite that Stark carried in space. It wasn't housing, well, it was housing some type of weaponry, but it almost sounds very futuristic. Like if I were to think back, this would be kind of the ideas that I would have in my mind as to what defense would look like as a kid, of course. And thinking back on what the future would look like with cars, with airplanes, how these things would operate, even things like game consoles like the Xbox or the PlayStation, what those things would look like. If you guys remember, if you guys searched up Xbox 360 or Xbox 5 or whatever we thought it was going to be, we saw these things that looked like spherical balls where it was just the Xbox logo as the actual console itself. And then even the controller concepts where it had like glass, where the buttons, like you couldn't see no wiring, none of that, no motherboard, no nothing. And so just funny how all this sort of technology just continues to progress. And ultimately, we find ourselves in a place right now is the fact that they want to build this so-called Golden Dome. And this is quite crazy technology that is going to be implemented here to protect the United States of America. I mean, ultimately, I think this is needed. I think this is necessary because Russia, we're seeing some increased, very tense things with what's happening with Russia, the war that's going on there. It doesn't seem like anything is going to slow down because they just keep attacking each other. And Trump is on this. He just continues to say that there is over 5,000 people that continue to be killed daily with regards to this war. The Israelis continue to face rockets, still shooting into Israel. And so there's so much that is happening. Yemen still attacking. There's just a lot of stuff happening. So, of course, Iran trying and attempting to obtain a nuclear ballistic missile. And if they obtain that, they can do intercontinental travel, if that is even the word that I'm thinking of, but they can basically shoot the missile in space and have it fly right into America.
And Canada has called us and they want to be a part of it. So we'll be talking to them. They want to have protection also. So as usual, we help Canada do the best we can. This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years.
That's great.
Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that, but including hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and advanced cruise missiles. All of them will be knocked out of the air. We will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland, and the success rate is very close to 100%, which is incredible when you think of it. You're shooting bullets out of the air. I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome. A very talented man, and I'm very honored to have been the one that helped or really created Space Force. Space Force has turned out to be a tremendous success. We were third in space, and now we're number one in space by a lot. It's not even close. And Mike is a 4-star Space Force general, the recipient of the Defense Distinguished Service Medal.
So what do you guys think of this? Do you guys think this is going to be successful? Do you guys think this is actually a project that will get completed within the end, or at least by the end of his term? I think so. So far, he's kept on the promises that he's made. But I think we're going to be in good hands. I think we'll be in good hands. We just have to wait and see exactly what's going to happen within these next 3 to 4 years, whether that be the case or not. But ultimately, I think something that I wanted to bring out, another news item, which is the fact that Trump calls out the fact that there's genocide happening in South Africa. And so what he does is he actually plays a video for the South African president in the Oval Office, something that only Trump could do because he just has the power to do so. No other president would have done this. No other president would have most certainly mentioned anything with regards to what was happening. If you don't know, kill the Boer is something that is an insane phrase that is happening. It's almost like you can think of Free Palestine in some sense. I wouldn't say entirely exactly like that, but there's a genocide happening amongst white farmers in South Africa, where basically these are some of the most productive men in society. They were producing plenty for South Africa. And the thing is that these men are well off because they're doing what what they feel like they were called to do. They're not only Christians, but the persecution that is happening is because they don't like the white man. They don't like the white man doing this and owning and having all the stuff that they have. Quite sad when we look at the fact that they are feeling this type of way. It's like a reversed racism that is happening here. So let's take a look at this clip because I think it's just wild what they're doing. It's just, you just have to see it.
Case, are you expecting South Africa to drop that? Is that what you're trying to reason?
On which case?
ICJ case. Are you expecting South Africa to drop that? Is that what you're trying to reason?
On which case?
The ICJ case against Israel, International Criminal Court.
I don't expect anything, to be honest. I really don't. I don't know. They've got a case. There's a lot of anger there, tremendous anger. I don't expect anything. We'll see what happens. We'll have a ruling, and who knows what the ruling is going to mean. Yeah.
On that subject of Gaza, Mr. President, are you going to be speaking to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Israel's renewed offensive there? There's been a lot of concern from European countries. The Pope has expressed concern. Are you going to be asking Prime Minister Netanyahu to tone down the offensive in Gaza to let more aid in?
Was that a question or a statement?
Turn down the offensive in Gaza. Come on. You really think Trump is going to listen to this reporter and say, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm going to tell him to tone it down. I'm going to bust a Biden here and tell Benjamin Netanyahu, hey, you got to chill out. You got to chill out. Reel it back in. Don't do what you need to do. Wild statement there.
You never change.
Mr. President, decide what will it take from you?
Doesn't even answer. That's so funny. He just moves on to the next question because it's nonsense. It's just nonsense.
He's convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa.
Well, I can answer that for the president. It's for him.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer that.
Oh.
It will be.
My president will respond to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the.
This is like a Zelensky 2.0 that happened here. I mean, check this out. I mean, we're going to hear some nonsense from him. And then guess what? Here's what's going to happen. Trump's going to stop. And he's going to say, turn down the lights. And they're going to watch a video.
Voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends.
You say, honestly, being 23, the world is getting worse every year. Yeah. Hello from Canada. Hello, welcome. Thanks for joining the podcast. We're just going over some news items, things that are happening in America, things that are happening in South Africa, so many things. Thanks for joining me, guys, on the podcast. Guys, if you have any questions, any comments, I know there's a lot of talk going about Israel, people still saying Free Palestine, all that nonsense. Guys, let's take a look at the truth of the matter. Somebody says, where is Palestine? There is no Palestine. They're given a land temporarily. And yeah. So there's just so much nonsense, so much misinformation that is happening that people just don't realize history, the true history in Israel. The land was given to God. The land was given to God way before the people were even considered a Jewish nation. It was given to Abraham. Abraham was called by God to go to a land. And he says that he gives him a promise. He says, your seed will be as the sand of the sea. You look up at the heavens, count the stars. Abraham can't count them. He says, your seed will be just like the stars in heaven. And quite interesting that we find the fact that later down the line, we get the fact that he's promised a son. He eventually has a son named Isaac. Of course, he has Ishmael, but it's interesting that God points out that Isaac is his only begotten son. Quite interesting, especially when we see the fact that before he goes to sacrifice his son, he says, go now, take your son, your one and only son, Isaac, to be offered as a burnt offering. And so Abraham is obedient. This is such a fascinating story with all of this, with regards to the sacrifice, this almost sacrifice of Isaac. But anyway, the land is promised to Abraham, and so on and so forth. We see Moses taking this place to bring the Israelites out of captivity, as God had said the Israelites would be to Abraham. They would be in captivity for 420 years, just about. And after that captivity, Moses is called to take the Israelites out into the wilderness to go worship their God. I got off on that tangent, but this is a land that eventually they come to, where during the book of Joshua, we see that at some point Moses is able to look at the promised land, but he cannot enter the promised land. This is because of the sin that he had done, or this very specific action of striking the rock, and he misrepresented God to the people. And he said, because of this, you will not be seeing the promised land. Quite interesting to think about those things, but let's take a look back at this video.
Like those who are here, when we have talks between us around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it will take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, wait.
Here we go.
We have thousands of stories talking about it.
Sure.
And we have documentaries, we have news stories. And is Natalie here? Somebody here to turn?
Carlos G, you say, don't forget that that man, Abraham, was not patient with God. Was not patient with God. I think he meant patient with God, and had Ishmael. We often see he said he's probably using crap OBS. Yeah, it is crap, but it is free. So I'll take free over paying $500 for a dang freaking another app. Anyway, Abraham most certainly tried to do things his way, but we find out the fact that Abraham didn't need to do it his way because God had made him a promise. And even though Abraham and Sarah would at their old age, what happened was eventually God gave them a son. So if they would have just waited, most certainly God would have had everything to have it his way, God's way. But instead, Abraham wanted to have it his way. And of course, Abraham, being a man, said, yeah, it's fine. Sarah said so I'm going to do it. Not all the actions there are condoned by God, but we see the fact that during this time, there's division amongst him and his wife, animosity between the two, even between the handmaid. This is not God's will. Yet God still took the bad and turned it to good, because we got the wonderful promises that were made to Abraham eventually fulfilled, and God gave us the Jewish nation. But man can never wait for God. That's not true. You can exercise obedience to wait for God. We just want to act on our own will. That's why it says in the book of Proverbs that, this is actually Proverbs 3. I can read it for you. Very popular passage that you may know or may not know. Let's go over to our trusty Logos Bible software here. Yeah, right. Crap OBS. Won't even find the dang window. I have to move it over. Yeah, you're right. Maybe I do. Maybe I do need to go to another application, huh? Anybody got any suggestions? Because this is nonsense, most certainly. All right, so let's just take a look at this passage. Then we'll get back to the South African video that Trump plays for him. But otherwise, the passage that we're looking at is verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones, if you so choose to trust in the Lord with all your heart. You do not lean on your own understanding. If Abraham would have just did that, I mean, obviously this is written by David a couple thousand years ago, or a couple thousand years later, or hundreds of years later. I'm not thinking of the timeline right now. But otherwise, yeah, if Abraham would have done those things, but little by little, surely enough, finally God breaks through to Abraham, and finally Abraham is able to be obedient to God and just trusting in the Lord. It took him a long time, but he eventually got there. So let's continue on here.
I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would. And turn the lights down. Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you, Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether...
You can tell. If I just zoom in here, he looks so embarrassed. He looks so embarrassed. He's probably like, crap. What am I going to do now? What am I going to say? And he tries to make it all about diplomatic relations and a bunch of nonsense.
Can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. Honorable member, can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament. Honorable. Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point.
Never be scared to kill. A revolution demands.
There must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. Yamasa.
They're going to start chanting, kill the Boer.
Poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer.
This is a political rally. So they want to take the farmers' land. They don't want to pay them for anything, not a dime. You say, referencing a Bible, you must be Christian, right? Or are you Jewish? I'd like to learn your denomination. I don't have a denomination. True biblical Christianity, true Judaism, there's no denomination. I was a part of a denomination. It's a topic for another day. You can check out the video on my YouTube channel with regards to the fact that this church I was in was almost cult-like. It exhibited cult-like traits and qualities. I say that, but it really centers around the fact that it was a prosperity gospel church, a Pentecostal laying out in the Spirit. It's when I first became a Christian. Soon realized that, of course, the Lord speaking to my heart. Realized soon after that I was discerning the fact that God was telling me to move out of that, get out of that church. He was kicking me out. He was literally putting his foot to my back, not literally, but he was pushing me out of the church doors. Because I started to see the truth. I started to read scripture and understand. Because this church did not carry the Bible. This church didn't even ask you to carry your Bibles. You just got a little pamphlet of some notes the pastor wrote. You're not even required to bring your Bible to cross-reference what he's saying, to check what he's saying. And it dealt all about prosperity. Wild. But I soon realized, me and my buddy soon realized that this was a church that was not for somebody who is seeking after the truth. They would only push it away. They would only suppress the truth of the Bible.
The mayor of DA in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man.
Isn't that
not
wild?
Because Mashaba and Soli will not be touched. They will be touched. Don't worry. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
The president can't. The South African president can't even watch. Maybe he's embarrassed. Maybe he's not. Maybe he just doesn't care. But Trump got the receipts. He's got the receipts and he's showing them right to his face, and he can't even look at the damn video because he knows what's happening. He knows it's happening, and he's letting it happen. I'm curious. Is he even like? Is he smiling? Wow. And it's clip after clip after clip after clip. Name, you say the South African president asked, where was this? You say many Protestant churches are afraid to commit to the Bible. Unfortunately, it can come across as a feel-good ceremony with little biblical inspiration. I saw this as a Baptist. Yeah, unfortunately, the feel-good message, some people love that stuff. You say, what do I think about Catholicism? Let me finish my point. You said, so some people love the fact that this prosperity gospel, the feel-good message, because it makes them feel good. They go to church on Sunday, they go to church midweek, makes them feel good, and then they get to keep on sinning. They get to keep on doing what they're doing. In some cases, the church may be successful in keeping this person away from sin temporarily, but if they were to leave that church, it actually is very detrimental to them in their walk with God. They actually end up falling really hard because they stumble on the truth and then they get crushed by it. So what do I think about Catholicism? Well, there's a lot to disagree with the Catholicism. Of course, we talk about the worship of the statues, the saints. I say statues because I come from a Catholic family, and there's statues typically around the households of my families. But there is a worship of these saints, and in most Mexican cultures, essentially each saint has an ability to do something. Whether it is to heal, whether it is to give money, whether it is to or get money for prosperity, for whatever. Each saint has its own role. This is common within the Hispanic community. yeah, so otherwise, there's just a lot that I just don't agree with. Somebody said, Carlos, he said, don't even get me started on Catholicism. Yeah, anyway, the worship of Mary, there's so much. The Pope, Christ died to abolish the fact that we need another mediator, a human mediator. Christ is the ultimate ladder to get to God. This is why the veil in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. It wasn't done by a man. It wasn't done by humanity, cutting it from the bottom up. And this is a thick, mind you, a thick veil, thick, woven deeply and tight. You couldn't get through it, couldn't see through it. Had to be thick like that.
St. Jude was not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future. Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter. They freak out. It sounds like a genocidal
Yeah, Trump is going to go on talking about the fact that he's going to show some papers with regards to some graves.
Okay. Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One. Perhaps
what are you talking about?
Can we have a South African question, please?
So much, there's so much news that is just so much to cover with regards to everything. I mean, absolutely everything. And so, gosh, we just don't want to miss anything for you. So otherwise, I want to address one last sort of thing here. We could talk about all of this all day. This is from a man who usually comes into the, I assume he's a man. But anyway, usually comes into the comments. He's not here today. His name is YouTube Punk. He says, this is YouTube Punk from the live chat. I'm curious if you caught the latest Apologia episode that dropped today. Very cool informative information about early Christendom. I have not checked out the video. He sent me the link. Thanks for the link. It talks about the truth of how the 12 apostles died and a response. But he also talks about the fact that this man named Justin, who hosts his own channel, his stance is strange. I've watched a couple of his things, a couple of his items. He talks about the fact that he doesn't believe that God is the one that created everything, being that that God is the eternal being. He believes that the universe is the eternal thing, that time, space, and matter are the eternal thing. And so in various different videos, he talks about the fact that he's, different stances on things like slavery, different stances on a couple topics. I haven't watched completely some of this stuff, but I've been kind of going through the debates, and some of the stuff is very weak on some of the people that join the show. Will I be calling into a show? Most certainly not. I will not be calling into a show. I don't have any desire to sort of debate somebody who makes all these claims. And a lot of the claims that he makes are essentially faith-based claims. Says he doesn't believe in a God, yet he's believing in the universe essentially, being that it is the ultimate thing that started it all. But the probabilities of the universe coming into exist, or rather the universe being, there's really no evidence for that, but the universe being all eternal, and then the probability of life even happening. Fascinating interview. Boy, to be able to pull it up will take some time. But fascinating interview that Charlie Kirk did with a Jewish man. And they talk about this probability of the universe, life coming into existence, essentially. And it's quite big. And so let's see if we can play a couple of these clips, because I think it's very valid to go through this stuff to just understand the sort of point of views that I hold to. I think it's very important.
What is RFK Jr. putting in his drink?
We're not going to go and watch the ad. I'm sorry, guys. Let me get past this ad for a sec. Otherwise, how are you guys doing? This fine. Boy, I'm not sure how I can mute this. All right. This fine Friday morning, 12:37. You say love from. What flag is that, man? I'm terrible with my flags. In Israel? Please tell me what flag it is. I cannot see the emoji very clear. Africa is the future. Okay, bro, I'm not even Christian, but even Christians were persecuted by the Catholic Church. Yes, they were. Well, the thing about during the so much to happen with the Crusades. We got to go over that on a topic at some point. I think that would be very fascinating to just dive deep, look at the Crusades, look at the things that happened during that time. So let's take a look at what happened on this podcast with Charlie Kirk. Very interesting about the proof of God's the proof of God's existence is the title of this clip here.
Oh, I'm Jewish.
Okay.
Yeah, but I deeply appreciate Christians and Christianity.
Likewise, I wanted to. Would you say that you came in contact with God, or the idea of God, or the concept? Because coming into a relationship with God is usually Christian language. That's why I.
Oh, I see. No, in Judaism we have a relationship with God. Absolutely. Rabbis will often ask you, "What's your relation? How is your relationship with God? Tell me about that depth of the relationship." And it's no different in Christianity. We're very solid.
Yes.
So I came to that realization. So I started off first, understand that there must be a creator. And I recommend this. If you want to convince your non-believing friends, take it methodically. Start off with, is there a creator? Forget about the God of the Old Testament, God of the New Testament.
The Levitical laws.
Yeah, Levitical laws. Forget about all that. Leave it aside. Is there a creator with a capital C? And you'll ultimately have to come to the conclusion that, of course, there is. It's obvious. The math demands it. The probabilities demand it. Frankly, it's silly not to believe that there's a creator. Okay, so there's three different things that I love to talk about. The chances of the universe coming into fruition by itself, randomly, that is. And that is something on the order of 1 out of 10 to the 64th or 1/28th. It's so obscene that I can't imagine the amount of zeros that are involved. Likewise, then, that the Earth would be formed, that the universe would form in the way it has formed, meaning with the gaseous and solidifying of the planets and the orbits around them. That it doesn't have to be. I mean, it could have been that this universe would be entirely gas and nothing more. But instead, we have the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry and so on.
They soon get into the conversation of free will. It's actually a very interesting point that atheists cannot hold to the idea of free will, because free will is something that is given to us by God. So they can't have this sort of free will thinking in mind, because we're essentially just a bunch of gases or clumps of cells or whatever it is that they believe we are. So if somebody, goes out and you want to kill somebody or you want to steal, the atheistic logic is that if you're being true to atheism, you're going to say that, well, it doesn't really matter because we're just a clump of cells. So this all of this is by chance. All of this is by sort of just the evolution of life and everything. They're going to talk about it. It's very interesting.
So these are things that, again, the probabilities of that would be absurd. And now you have to multiply those two fractions in order to make it.
Carlos G, you say it boggles my mind on how can Jews say that they believe in God but not his son? Well, remember, Paul tells us that the Jews are blinded in part. And we look at all across the Old Testament and the New Testament that the Jews in some way, some form will be blinded because they continue to fall into idolatry. They continue to fall into just complete and utter things that are taking them away from God. And so they are blinded in part. They will not see it. We see in Zechariah chapter 12 or 14 that they will look upon him whom they had pierced, and they'll see his wounds and they'll say, "Where did you get these?" And he will say, "I got them amongst my brethren." And then they will mourn as one mourns for his only son. Quite interesting scripture to put there. God is so good. His wisdom so fascinating that he's able to tell us to the very detail of everything that is going to happen. See, because there is zero evidence Jesus was the Son of God. His claims, the things that they wanted to kill him on, stone him, because of the things that he have said, when he says, "I am," before Abraham was, "I am." When he goes back to Nazareth, there's so many things that you say there's zero evidence for Jesus being the Son of God, that he was the Son of God, but the very works themselves, if you don't believe Jesus says, just believe my works. You won't believe my word, believe my works.
Together. So the chances of the universe beginning in the first place and creating the universe as it did. Then you have to go, there are many other steps in between, but the next one I like to talk about is the chances of life forming by itself, randomly. And that indeed also is 1 out of 10 to the 125th, I think it was, some obscene number. And again, you have to multiply that new fraction to the previous fractions.
Yeah, the probability would be if you stacked nickels all across the United States, from here to the moon, times 1,000, and one of them was a red cent, and you were blindfolded, could you find that one red cent?
Yeah, I like that.
That's the likelihood of just life.
Right, just
not
life.
the fine-tuning of the universe itself.
Right.
So you say fine-tuning of universe, fine-tuning of Earth, fine-tuning of life. So there's 3 gradations of improbability.
Right.
Am I articulating that?
Exactly
and
right.
then you get to a place where you need a quantum computer for the number.
Right, exactly right. It is a big, big number. And not only that, but you have to then go into the question of evolution, right? That somehow we could explain the intelligence in life.
Yes.
And the kind of intelligent life we have today, that it evolved to this point. That's another absurd fraction. So at some point you have to say this is silly. It's the old watch on the beach analogy, which is a very apt analogy. It's very fair. You have to assume that there's a creator, somebody who left that watch.
It's a good
on the beach,
analogy.
somebody who created that watch, and so on. And you're not just seeing something that was created there by the waves and the sand.
And this is not worth our time to do more than 20 seconds. Do you believe in evolution, or do you believe in creation of man?
I believe in creation of man.
No, I do too.
Yeah.
And we'll have you on for a different time, because I think that, look, I'm not even saying if you believe in evolution, you're necessarily a bad person. I just personally have the belief of creation.
Yeah, people try to shoehorn evolution in many ways. They want to have it both ways. They want to
Here,
say,
Jason, you say there is evidence that Jesus existed, and according to the Bible, he is the Son of God, but that does not mean that just because he existed, he was actually God or a superior being. Now, the thing is that since we have the account of Christ dying and rising, this just validates all of the claims that he's said prior. He foretold the things that would happen, that would happen, and then therefore he rose from the dead. Now, you might argue, well, where's the sort of external source other than the things that are written in the Bible? Now, first of all, we have to look at and consider Luke being such a great historian during that time, is the fact that when he was writing these things, when he was documenting the stuff that was happening during the time of Christ, he was being very specific with very intentional eyewitness accounts, very intentional writing style, very intentional a way of documenting and really putting in ways to understand the time, the place, the area, the region. Is very specific. Even to the genealogy of Christ, because this Messiah would have to come through the line of David. And so he traces the line from Mary's line up to Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. So the fact that he made all these claims, radical claims, before Abraham was, I am, talking about the fact that he reads the book of Isaiah, stops mid-chapter or mid-verse, closes the scroll. This is in Nazareth. They chase him to a cliff, right? They want to kill him because of the things that he's saying. The other instances of the Pharisees challenging him and his authority and his power, about the way that he casts out devils, demons, and they just cannot pin him on anything. But anyway, the foretelling of all this stuff in the Old Testament, the fact that this person would come onto the scene, but would be cut off from the living, but then he would rise again. So the external sources that I'm talking about with all these other people like Josephus or Origen or whoever, these Roman historians, they would say the disciples claimed that he rose from the dead. Now, it doesn't directly say that Jesus rose from the dead, but the fact is, if they said themselves that Christ rose from the dead, right? Well, of course, they would be considered a Christian. They would be killed. They wouldn't want to say that. So they would only say the disciples say. They wouldn't give no evidence as to, well, this person, that person, they claim they saw Christ, they saw Jesus. There's too much to account for that it's kind of impossible. All these people can't be hallucinating. No, most certainly not. Doesn't make any sense.
I believe in evolution, but it's directed by God. I have a tough time with that.
And they could be right. Again, I don't. Anyway, I'm just curious, kind of where you're coming from.
Yeah, that is a standpoint that people think things like basically what he said, in the sense that God set the course for evolution, and he's kind of directing it, kind of leading evolution to go in a specific direction. But God having foreknowledge, God knowing all, he sees the end and the beginning. He sees it all. So all the things that I've ever done, all the things that will be done, he's seen it all. It's all happened since he dwells outside of time. It has already happened. And so he can go through across the timeline and really insert himself wherever he needs to be in that moment. But it's already has been done. Quite interesting when we think about these things, the way he operates. This is stuff that is just far too complicated for our minds to understand. However, we know that Christ reigns, sits on the throne. He is King of Kings. He is Lord of Lords. And I'm going to call it there, guys, because we've been going on about so many, crazy news stories from the Jewish couple that just absolutely murdered in DC, to Ilhan Omar making no comment, saying, I've got to go now. Stupid. The passing of the big, beautiful bill in the House. This could take, maybe we might see something in July, August, maybe October if they continue to push things further, because the Senate will have to look at all of it. Gas will go down for Memorial Weekend, so you'll be able to go and travel where you need to go to, get to where you need to get to. The Golden Dome, we talked about. And then, of course, this comment with regards to somebody who wants me to call in to a show quite frankly, I don't have time to call into somebody else's show, debate for a while. Just not at that position yet. In the sense that I'm trying to grow my own channel here. I also have work. I have a family. Things that take more priority than debating somebody or calling into a live show. Maybe sometime, maybe. But the things and the arguments that he makes and that he stands for are very weak. So, otherwise, thanks so much for being here, guys. If you guys like what you guys heard, like what you saw, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out some of the other stuff that are more produced. I want to start getting back into the produced videos, but as of right now, I love the sort of conversations that we get to have at a live show here on YouTube. And just continue to share the word, continue to share the gospel. If you're a Christian, share the gospel, share the good news with somebody tomorrow or today. And thank God that you have breath in your lungs, that you can be able to speak. You say, hi from Nigeria. Thanks for being here, from Nigeria. Mohammed K. Saad. So again, I really appreciate you guys for joining me in the comments. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.